website that basically was set up in about 2007 by a genderqueer activist from America called Sarah Dobb. It was basically, it's like a blog, basically. So we post, we have submissions from people, from gender variant people and also their extended communities, as well as try and make it as inclusive as possible. And people submit things like questions, quotes, photographs, profiles, all of these sorts of things. And then there's this group of volunteers, about 10, 12 people, and we basically read through the quotes and the submissions and then post them up onto the website for people to discuss and to sort of get involved with. The website's kind of, the idea behind it was to kind of create a community, a sort of safe space for people to come together and discuss their identities and to discuss how they feel about these identities in a place where they've not going to face discrimination or prejudice. And that was kind of a really important part of the whole setup of the website, because on the internet there's plenty of places where discussions get quite heated and lose their track, whereas with this website we wanted to make it less about that and more about discussion in a kind of open and friendly sort of way. And that was kind of the need for it, really, was just to create a community where people can explore identity in a safe environment. I'm going to read you a couple of quotes that we've had sent in, just to give you a sort of idea of the sort of thing that people submit. So if I read this one first. I feel so glad to have found this site. It made me realise that I'm not the only one who doesn't want to be defined what's under my underwear, and that he or she isn't and shouldn't be the only choice a human is entitled to. When I'm tired of constantly battling out my existence in society alone, I visit this place and I feel strong again. I see people attracted to people, challenging gender roles and expressing themselves as they are, not as they should. I'm ready to shout, here I am, I exist, and I do not conform all over again. And this is kind of, that's the sort of thing we're going for with the website, is to have that people be able to express their identities and have that sort of freedom of expression, which is and uniting people together to build these communities up. It makes me tear up a little to see such freedom here. Why is it normal for girls and guys to do certain things to their appearance according to genders and not others? Why are people so submissive and accepting of these ideas? These types of questions bother me. Why do so many people seem to find it offensive when the masculine and feminine are crossed together? I just do not understand. Challenge gender as much as you can, never stop, mess with people's heads, and do not let anyone tell you who you are. And again, it's this sort of people having this need to express their identities and to express how they feel, and also having the need for understanding as well, and creating this sort of supportive community where people can express this sort of thing and also have the understanding that comes with that. And I think I've noticed it's really interesting with working with Genderfork, how we can see how, because it's on the internet, how this has kind of shrunk communities, shrunk the networks that we have to create sort of strength in our communities. I mean, before the internet was around, say, sort of 20 years ago, support networks people had were very, very small. Generally speaking, it was kind of consisted of people you knew rather than sort of the whole world. And it was sort of so it'd be like family, your friends, if you had that. Whereas nowadays it seems that because you can communicate with people all over the world and fairly instantly as well, it kind of changes the way that we sort of discuss and view identities and gender as well. You can get instant solutions. You can get there's the kind of safety in numbers thing, and it's easier to find like-minded people, easier for communities to be created and to grow. There's this, it's kind of like a shrinking world thing, where social circles before we had the internet and after kind of completely have changed. I think it's harder to explore identities with a smaller network if you're say you're in a rural location, or if you're slightly older even. These sorts of things kind of limit how you can explore who you are as a person. And so with Genderfork we've kind of tried to change that a bit so that people can communicate with people all over the world. It doesn't matter where you are, and it makes it easier as well because it's a supportive community. And the internet as a whole has kind of removed the barriers of people feeling isolated because of this, because it creates a sense of community without, I mean, you don't even need to really have any interaction if you don't want, because there's so much information out there. You can kind of just read things, you can read blogs, don't even have to comment on it or anything, and you can still feel that sense of community inside because someone's writing about something that you can relate to, and it's like a really, really important thing that you wouldn't necessarily have had sort of 20 years ago. I've got some quotes here as well. I'm torn on the issue of getting T, and T in this case is testosterone, the male hormone. I'm a male-identified genderqueer and a feminist, and have mixed feelings about personally going on hormones. I've learned to accept and love several things about myself, such as my short stature and being overweight. I'm a fierce advocate of self-love and self-esteem. My visibly queer identity has been a part of this. At the same time, I wish I had more of a male look, and that I could pass better and be taken more seriously as the person I am. I guess I'm stuck on what I should do for myself as a testament to my self-love versus what I could potentially do to make life a little less ambiguous for others as well as myself. And I think this again, it's quite a complicated question to ask, and it's also quite a personal question because you're putting yourself out there by saying, do I just look after myself or do I help other people? It's a big deal to ask that, and to ask that, you've got to have a sense of community where, and asking someone where you feel safe. And I think that again is quite an important thing, and that's why again at Genderfork we've tried to sort of encourage this sort of questioning as well. And again, with the responses to this, they're all very supportive, and it's quite interesting people just exploring their identities through this sort of thing, and what will be okay and what will not be. And I think with a lot of the things that people are posting on here, it's kind of the right, with the putting it down in words and sharing it creates something really powerful, like a statement of intent that people can then sort of embrace and go from. It allows other people as well to experience new perspectives and new ideas, which again helps other people find their identities. And with identities, it seems that they're kind of evolving and changing, and again, it's something that we see a lot with the website, and also with some, I do a bit of youth work as well, and again, you can see that certainly with the generations coming up, identities changing. And just purely as an example, it seems that now with bisexuality, people use pansexuality more than bisexuality, mainly just because bi it's literally binary, it's male or female, whereas with pan, it covers all aspects of gender, all spectrums. You don't just have to find someone who's male or female attractive, it's the whole range. And it seems that with identities, they are sort of evolving and changing, as also your gender identity is changing. That's kind of where the pansexual thing came through. I think it's because with trans identities, they also seem to be evolving and changing, and people are more prepared to, I think nowadays, certainly I've noticed, is that people are trying new words and redefining the old words and creating a whole new sort of idea of what words they can use to define themselves. So I mean, we have like things like trans and genderqueer as well, which is a relatively-ish new term, which people seem to use a lot more now, and rather than things like defining themselves as transsexual, transgender. It's also interesting as well, I've noticed, especially in relation to Genderfork, that there's also a lot of rejection of identity entirely, where people don't want to use any of those terms at all. They'd rather just go by their own terminology. A couple of quotes in relation to this. Given up on transitioning, felt like I was caught in a narrative that had no room for me. Now trying to figure out how to live outside that. So again, it's someone making their own personal identity. Another quote, quite a short quote I liked as well. When someone asks, are you a boy or a girl? I say yes. And again, it's like you're creating this identity for yourself rather than for anyone else. again, it's the sort of sharing of knowledge, which is creating sort of strength and solidarity together in the whole sort of trans community, gender sort of variant community. And I mean, with this strength, it changes the way that we react to things as well. For example, there, I don't know how many of you have read or heard about Julie Birchall's pretty transphobic piece in The Observer. I think because there was a really strong negative reaction to that and lots of condemnation both on the internet and in real life. There were protests and it led to the column getting pulled and an apology being issued. And again, I think that was in part because people can communicate so much quicker and so much faster on the internet, and you have this a strong community. Before that, it was, I would imagine there'd still be condemnation, there'd still be disgust at what she'd written, but I think it would have been harder to kind of bring together people to unify against that. I think the fact that these communities have been created on the internet allows it to kind of make it easier for people to come together and to discuss things and to organise things in real life as well as online. But that, I mean, the media's representation of trans people, it's a whole massive other lecture in itself, really. I think it's basically what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of voices combined together can create change. And it also kind of changes the way the society views trans cultures as well. It's because now we have the internet, it enables us to share pretty much everything, because we have all the social networks, we have social media, Twitter, blogs, everything, and so there is more knowledge, which leads to more exposure, which leads to familiarity, which in theory leads to less fear and more understanding, although it's not entirely perfect. But you see already like programs like My Transsexual Summer, which was actually a surprisingly positive representation of people with trans identities across the whole sort of gender variant spectrum, which was pleasantly surprising. I expected it to be kind of a wee bit more sensationalist because that's what we're used to with the press and with our representation, with how trans culture is represented. It's always kind of very negative, whereas I think because it's becoming more common knowledge, views like that are changing, and I think that's through things like blogs, like Facebook, like sites like Genderfork, where people are expressing how they feel and people are reading and understanding. I mean, I think it's just from personal experience, I've kind of noticed a change. I mean, I work in a shop, so I deal with the public every single day. That's 50 people a day, which is quite a lot of people. And I mean, I like to think I'm visibly trans, and it just doesn't faze people anymore so much. I deal with all these different people, world people, young people, kids, and I never get any hassle, I never get any trouble from all these different people. And again, I think it's a reflection on how trans identities are kind of being absorbed and accepted into society more and more so. And it's an enlightening thing and a lovely thing to see. I'm going to give you a few more quotes and stories, narratives that people have sent in to us for Genderfork, which I kind of think quite interesting and sort of again emphasise the point of this community and belonging and wanting to be involved with something and to be part of something, which I think is kind of a human need. We all need to feel like we want to belong to someone, we want to belong to a group, whether it's one person or many people. It's nice to feel that you're not alone, basically. So, let me give you this quote here. I finished my transition a few years ago, meaning that I had bottom surgery and have since more or less settled into a consistent gender presentation. I'm a tomboyish trans woman. I do not know why, but I really want to be more feminine. However, every time I try to achieve a more feminine presentation, I end up feeling really uncomfortable. I feel like I'm a phony. I feel maybe I should give it up and just accept that I'm not the pretty type, I'm the tomboy type. That makes me feel pretty crummy though. Anyone else feel this way? And so someone again has posted this really brave statement and put it up there for the whole world to see and for other people to discuss. And it's kind of really sort of validating to see that like this particular post got loads of comments and they were all really positive, all backing up that person, saying offering support, offering advice. I mean, some of the comments were really, really empowering, and someone commented, and this is lovely. Your appearance is not a promise to society, it's an expression of who you are. And again, it's sort of saying, I think that's such an important thing, and it's something that, I mean, I think I've struggled to a degree with being trans, is that you do think that, like, I used to think when I first sort of discovered my own identity, was that, yeah, I had to dress in a way that was more conventionally female because of that feeling of I have a promise to society to appear female, and it's just not the case. It's more about an expression of who you are, and it takes a while to get to that point, but it's really lovely that this person commented on that and said that. I think it's a really great thing. I mean, there's, again, lots of the other comments were all about saying how I understand what you're saying. I've been struggling with the same thing, and it's, again, the sense of community that's helping to shape people's identities. With your identities, it's trying to find identity is a really tricky thing. It's not at all easy, and there's so much pressure to conform and to have a particular way of looking, a particular way of being, and I think to find your own identity is difficult, and you need a support network. You need your family, you need friends, you need a community of sorts. And I think that's really hard to find sometimes. I mean, it was personally with me, I had that in that I had a supportive family, I had supportive friends. But if you didn't have that, if you didn't have family, if you didn't have friends that were supportive, or that just kind of cut you off, I can't even imagine how difficult it would be to explore identity. Which is kind of where the web communities come in, things like Genderfork and so many other websites as well that kind of are there for supporting. I think if you haven't got your family and your friends to support you, then that's where this sort of web community thing comes in and kind of can make a real difference. And I think as well it's helpful for people because it means that they can explore their identities and realise that everyone's gender identity is different, whether you class yourself as being trans or whether you class yourself as being cis. They're all different in their own little way, and it's all shaped by our own personal experiences and reactions, and having people to share that with enables it to be it makes it a lot easier to kind of talk about. I mean, I think certainly with me, my identity's evolved a huge amount through experiencing reaction, and it's been supported by these web-based forums and these web-based communities. I'm going to just finish off with a quote as well, which I really love, and I think this pretty much sums up hopefully what I'm trying to say in a kind of higgledy off-shooting way. It wasn't until I discovered the vision of an open coalition that I realised by accepting and validating my gender identity, I'm engaging in a radical act. When we imagine, invent and embrace fluidity, when we dare to express and be ourselves, we are creating not merely a space for ourselves, but a safer space for others to do the same. The greatest form of liberation may not actually be celebrating any particular label we have, but rather questioning all of them, constantly uncovering new meanings and new ways to define ourselves. Being queer means that for me, it opens up new territory to better express, understand and celebrate myself. Okay. Thank you.